Welcome, Jen. Thank you for joining us for the annual update.
Yeah.
And we'll kick off our meeting with you.
Okay. It's good to see everybody. I think everyone has a copy of my presentation. So today I'm going to go, as usual, every year I'm going to go over the results of the annual or biennial funding valuations. So as you know, we do full valuations in the odd years. So this year is an odd year where you perform the July 1st, 2023 valuations. That's where we collect updated census data and asset information. During the interim years, the even years is when we do, we reflect updated asset information, but we don't collect updated census information. But in all years, we gather the information necessary. We come up with a liability for the plans that represents the value of all future benefits expected to be paid from the plans, and analyze anything that's happened in the plan, look at trends, make sure that our assumptions are in line with what's actually happening and representing the true experience of the plan. And ultimately, we calculate the contributions that the town needs to make to the plans to fund these future benefits. Moving on to page 3, this is a snapshot of the plan population of the 2 pension plans. On the left-hand side is the town plan. On the right-hand side is the police plan. Both plans are still open and actively accruing benefits. So you can see these top graphs are broken down into three main colors. The active members, those people still currently working for the town, are in the blue section. Members that are in pay status, these are people who have terminated employment and are actively collecting a benefit from the town, are in the yellowish-orange section, and the purple section are terminated members, who are people who have terminated employment but have not yet started collecting a benefit. You can see that the blue section for both plans has remained relatively constant over the years. As it means your active population has been relatively level to flat, but you can see that the members in pay status have consistently grown year over year. So as people retire, they go into pay status, and the overall total population of the plan has grown.
Do I have the wrong presentation?
Yeah.
I think you did.
Look, Karen to the rescue.
Yeah, thank you.
So the total membership has steadily increased with time.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
On the bottom part of this page, we have our distribution of the active population. It's broken down by age on the left-hand side and years of service. The town plan is very heavily weighted towards shorter service people. Almost about 40% of the population has less than 5 years of service. So a lot of new entrants into the plan. That being said, there's still a fair number of participants who could retire today. Most would be with early retirement benefits or a reduced benefit, but there are still 50 people that are over 65 in the plan today. On the police side, it's a more dispersed plan. Obviously a smaller population, but still some high concentration in younger ages and lower service on the top left-hand quadrant. Again, about 20% of the population is eligible for retirement on the police side, and that is a 20-year service requirement. On to the next page is the population for the OPEB plans. The town plan, as you know, is still open and actively accruing benefits, although the town plan mainly covers the Board of Ed employees. The town is covered, but it's just dental only. There are no medical benefits offered in retirement for town members. So while it's the larger plan as far as size, it's not necessarily the larger plan as far as liability and cost. And the police plan, however, the police plan is closed. So you can see the blue section for the police plan is decreasing, and as of July 1st, 2023, we're down to 23 active employees still in the OPEB plan, and up to 32 members who are currently receiving benefits. Moving on to page 5, a 5-year history of the asset performance in the plan and the asset valuations in the plan. Plans over the last 5 years. Up top, you can see the return on a market value basis. During fiscal year 23, returned about around 7.5%. Pretty common with what we saw for most municipalities across the state of Connecticut. This past year, your expected rate of return is 6.25%, so you slightly overperformed the expectation, so that did produce a slight actuarial gain on the assets. So as you know, for purposes of calculating your funding contribution, we use an actuarial value of assets, and what that means is we reflect investment gains and losses over a 5-year period rather than recognizing them all at once in any given year. So you can see, if you look at the bottom part of the page, the darker green bars, the ones on the left, represent the market value of assets, and the lighter green bars represent the actuarial value of assets. And you can see for both plans, the actuarial value of assets is still slightly larger than the market value of assets. What that means is that we're still recognizing losses primarily from fiscal year 22. They haven't fully been recognized in the actuarial value of assets. And in the absence of any future gains, that will continue to put upward pressure on the contributions and downward pressure on the funding ratio going forward for the next 3 years until we fully recognize those investment losses from fiscal year 22. And then moving on to page 6, it's a very similar picture for the OPEB plan. Similar investment returns, both plans are invested fairly similarly. And again, we have been doing asset smoothing in these plans for 5 years now, so we have 5 full years of investment gains and losses being recognized in the actuarial value of assets, and not quite as much of a discrepancy between the market value and actuarial value, but still the actuarial value of assets for the OPEB plans is slightly larger than the market value still as of July 1st, 2023. So moving on to page 7. Every year, as part of our analysis, we take a look at the plan's investment allocation, and we measure it against our capital market assumptions that our financial experts have developed. We develop them twice a year. So we apply those against our capital market assumptions as of June 30th, 2023. The top graph represents your portfolio, how you're invested. So you have 40% fixed income, 60% in equity, and that smaller black dot in the middle represents the entire portfolio, the expected return, and the risk associated with the portfolio. On the bottom part of the page, this shows the distribution of expected returns over time. And in any given year, you could have a lot of volatility in your return. You saw that a couple pages ago, where the investment returns were bouncing up and down. But as time goes on, we expect it to kind of tend towards the 50th percentile. And using our capital market assumptions as of June 30th, 2023, our estimate of your expected return on assets is 6.3%. When we did this analysis last year, it was about 6.4%. And when we did the analysis 2 years ago, it was 5.9%. So as you know, with the market, the high inflation over the last couple of years and interest rate yields going up so much, it led to a higher return expectation, rosier picture last year. It's pulled back a little bit, and this is as of June 30th, and bond yields have dropped a lot in the last month in anticipation of things to come in the new year. So I think bonds dropped about 40-50 basis points from in the month of December alone. So we'll see where things land on June 30th, 2024. But as of right now, you're right where our expectation is. So the 6.25% assumption that we're currently using is a good assumption, and we're not recommending any changes to that assumption at this time. Moving on to page 8, we have a graph of the plan's funded ratio over the last several years. The main theme here is, for the most part, the funded ratio has gone down for all four plans slightly. The town pension plan has stayed pretty much level, but the other 3 plans did go down a bit. On the town side, the town pension plan side, there were some losses, liability losses, due to higher salary increases than we expected in our assumptions. But those were offset mostly by higher turnover than we expected, so a lot more people terminated employment than expected. And it's very represented on that first page, where you saw lots of people lower service. So you have had a lot of turnover in recent years. That produces gains because people are not working as long as we expect and not accruing as large of a benefit as we would expect. Overall, on the town pension side, there was about a loss of about $300,000 on the liability. For the police pension, there was a loss due to more retirements than expected, as well as another loss due to higher salary increases than expected as well. And also, in addition, a loss due to fewer deaths than expected. So while, so people are living longer than we expected, payments are being made for longer than we expected, therefore it's a higher cost to the plan. On the police pension side, there was an overall net liability loss of $2.5 million. So that's what's driving the funded ratio dropped from 100% last year down to 95% this year in that blue line. On the town OPEB side, this actually for both OPEB plans, there were some liability losses, about 8 to 10% of the liability, as a result of claims increasing more than expected. The costs of healthcare have gone up, and therefore the cost of the OPEB has gone up as well. So moving on to page 9, we take the assets, we take the liabilities, we see how they compare to each other, and we use that to calculate an actuarially determined contribution for the town to make to the plan in the upcoming fiscal year to help to be able to put the plans in position to pay future benefits as they become due. And so this graph shows the history of the actuarially determined contribution over the last 10 years or so. And you can see, and I do apologize, I did find a typo when I was reviewing this afternoon, that the town OPEB plan says it's a $0.3 million contribution. It really should be to 0.4. Nothing significant, but I just wanted to point that out. But all plans, the contribution has gone up from last year to this year. And we did expect all contributions to go up slightly. Remember, if you remember earlier, the fiscal year, the investment losses in fiscal year 22, that alone is putting downward pressure on the funded ratio and upward pressure on the ADC as we recognize those losses over the next 5 years. So we did there was expectation that costs would go up, but they just went up by more than we originally expected because of those losses I talked about on the previous slide on the liability side. So your town pension plan is at $2.7 million, the police pension's at $1.3 million, the town OPEB's at $400,000, and the police OPEB's at about $500,000, for a total of about $5 million, all said and done on all 4 plans. And the next 4 pages, I can go through any of the numbers. The next 4 pages are just nitty-gritty numbers of all of our different scenarios. I can go through those if there's any questions on them, but our recommendation is to move forward with all the changes and use the numbers in the far right-hand column on all 4 pages for all 4 plans. There really weren't much for assumption changes other than on the pension plans is updating the mortality assumption to use the MP 2021 ultimate mortality improvement scale. We were using MP 29 previously. As you know, the Society of Actuaries comes out with a new table every year, although they haven't in the last 2 years. Because of COVID experience, it's distorted the studies, so they've decided to just defer that to the future. So the MP 2021 table is the most up-to-date table. So we're recommending making that change for all of the plans. On the pension side, it actually lowered the liability a bit. And that, as we've seen in every year, as we've updated that mortality projection scale, the SOA, the Society of Actuaries, has pulled back a little bit more and not had as much of a rosy picture for future longevity. So that's why the costs have gone down. You know, the expectation of future longevity is not as great as we thought. So longevity being decreased means pension payments being paid for less period of time, benefits being offered for a lower period of time, but for a lower cost to the plan.
So am I understanding this correctly? It's showing us that the life expectancy is not as great as thought?
Right, so when they first came out with these mortality improvement scales,
Yeah.
They had this really
They were overly zealous
and overly
okay.
optimistic about
Yeah.
longevity. And every year, the data has shown that it was a little bit too, they pulled back a little bit more and a little bit more.
Okay.
All right, so the MP21 scale represents mortality experience through the end of 2019, which is why there hasn't
Okay.
been anything since, because the next one would have reflected mortality experience in 2020. And then the MP23 would have reflected mortality expense through 2021. And with the COVID pandemic, the pandemic mortality, all that going on, it was just too much noise.
Okay.
And the Society of Actuaries decided to defer that and leave it where we're at currently. They've revisited every year, and they haven't decided yet if they're going to do one in 2024. We'll find out.
Okay.
But eventually they will update that schedule. And there will be a new base table. The PUB 2010 table at this point is almost 15 years old. There likely will be a new base table in the next 2 to 3 years that I'll come back and talk to you about again. If you recall, when we changed to the PUB 2010 table a few years back, that had a fairly significant impact on liability. I don't expect any change from the PUB 2010 to a new table will have nearly as much of an impact because it'll be more of an apples-to-apples comparison, just reflecting updated experience. If anything, it may even bring down liabilities a bit based on the changes on the MP scales. When you look at the OPEB, there's much more. The OPEB results have several more columns, which is kind of just broken down for you to see the impact of everything. You know, OPEB has several more iterations to be able to capture the costs. First, we have to look at the impact of just updating the long-term healthcare costs that are assumed, that our healthcare actuaries put together for us. And then we look at the impact of updating the medical trend inflation. So that's inflation assumption. So that's how do we expect medical costs to increase in the future. And then again, we have the slight change to the mortality scale assumption on the far right-hand column.
The mortality table, there's just one for employees versus police. Is there ever any, do they ever dial down to more specific?
There are different flavors based on salary amount, like average income and stuff, but we don't find that that's worthwhile for plans of this
Salary
size.
of more job.
Yeah. The biggest differentiator is the job type, public safety versus non-public safety, and then
Well, that's
teachers
obvious.
are put by themselves in their own category.
Okay, so we do that.
And that's likely because there's a lot of very large statewide teacher pension plans, like the state of Connecticut has, so that's why there's lots of pension plans that are focused on just teachers. So there's a lot of data to study those, to study that group of people. But all in all, the plans are still really well funded. The town pension plan is just hovering above 100%. Police plan is at 95%, and then the OPEB plans are at 83 and 74%. So those are all excellent and better than most in the state.
I was just going to ask from like a peer perspective.
Yeah, and remember, you're using a 6.25% discount rate as well. So
Right.
you have a really solid high funded ratios with conservative discount rate. If you had those funded ratios and you're using 7% discount rate, I would say it's good, but it's not great. But you have conservative discount rate and a really healthy funded ratio. You're better than most of your peers, I would say. Even in this part of the state as well.
Does anyone have any questions for Jennifer? Tony, any questions?
Jennifer, that was very clear, thank you.
Clearly a lot of money.
It's still green. I didn't see him go. Are you still there, Tony?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, that's okay. Just want to make sure we didn't lose you.
No. Yeah, I had looked at this, and they did a great job in laying out the progressions. Explanation all makes sense. So, it's difficult when you have, a very large loss that's going to get worked in and then have liability losses. So hopefully we get another 28% year, next year.
That would be nice.
I was going to say, we're also working.
And then we'll see this all come down.
Yeah, last year.
Root for the markets. Okay, great. Well, I guess we don't have any other further questions, so thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate the update.
Good to see you all.
Great to see you too.
Stay
Thank
dry. Be in touch.
Is it supposed to rain or just?
I know, it doesn't.
Is it a
It's
rain?
not looking too nice out there. I will say.
No, that's not.
Not at all. Okay. The next item up on our agenda.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
The next item up on our agenda is just a review of the quarterly invoices and expenditures. And there isn't anything to act on, but were there any questions or any comments that anybody had on this information? Or on the Boston Partners update that was sent around? Seemed fairly straightforward and consistent, so if there are no questions, we'll move on to item 3, which are the retirement and refund applications. I know for the town, we had held off on the third quarter approvals, waiting for our review and quorum. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was the review. So we have both third and fourth quarter represented here, and the police have a couple as well, so we will need to take action on those. Were there any questions for either the police or the town on any of the retirement and refund applications? No? Okay. And Tony, I know I always ask you, I know you are kind enough to always review these as well, and just want to confirm that you didn't have any additional questions or comments to add?
No, I was able to match all of Finley's calculations, so I'm in agreement with their calculations.
Okay, wonderful. So we'll start with the town, and could I ask for approval for the retirement and refund applications? Fred?
That motion?
Yeah, motion with Fred. Do I have a second? With Tony on the phone, we can just do his voice.
He can.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. Tony?
Yes.
You'll second? Approved? Okay, great. And for the town, we've all approved. And do I have a motion for the police?
So moved.
For approval? Kim, do I have a second?
Second.
Brent, and all in favor? Wonderful, unanimous, okay. Great. That brings us to the minutes. I know for the July minutes, we did not have a quorum for the town, so we need to approve them. There was one just minor typo comment that I wanted to mention just on the July 18th minutes. The asset date, I don't know what happened. It said 63/31/2022. So just to update that to 6/30/23. But otherwise, I didn't have any other comments. I don't know if anybody from the town had any other comments.
No.
Okay, so do we have okay, great. Do I have a motion to approve the July minutes for the town?
I'll make that motion.
Fred made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Wonderful. Tony seconds, and all in favor? We've all approved. We also have the October 10th minutes for both town and police approval. So I guess we're going to have to push this off for the town because neither Fred nor Tony were here in October, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
And let's see, Brent, you weren't here either. So I think we're going to have to push off approval. But in the meantime, were there any comments or any updates to be shared on the October minutes? No? Okay.
Did the police need to approve July 18th as well? or-
They did last time.
They
You
did
guys
as
had a
well.
quorum. Yeah. It was just the town that didn't have a quorum. So we'll push the October 10th minutes for approval to the April meeting, which I wanted to just confirm because when we were in our last meeting, we confirmed the agenda or the calendar for 2024, and we split it to in-person to remote, and the April is in-person. It's remote.
It's remote.
Okay, that's what I wasn't sure. We didn't note on here whether it was going to be remote or in person. I know July is remote. We chose July to be remote because I know that's when we have a difficult time to
I'll
get the quorum.
confirm April, if not, I'll update.
I think
Okay.
we were doing October.
Okay.
I think they were 2 in a row.
Right,
Which was
I
not
think it's
ideal,
July,
but that's how
October.
that's how
Okay.
it came out.
All right, so then we'll plan
Let's
on
hope
April
April.
to be in person. So I just wanted to mention that and remind everybody, since this is the first year we're
I think
doing
April
that.
and July were remote,
I think April and July were remote
I believe so.
Okay, and
And
October is
October
the in-person again.
with
Thank you.
January, yes.
Okay.
That's my recollection.
Okay, but Karen will help us all.
Yes.
Confirm. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, that concludes the formal items that were on the agenda. So unless there was anything else, I think
Wow.
we'll take a
Wow.
motion to dismiss and adjourn.
Very efficient, Kelly.
That may be a record. That may
Not
be a
with an
record.
We just need some
actuarial
motions
summary.
and then we can formally,
Motion.
Thrown in there.
Mike does a
We're
motion
actively
for the
motioning.
Yes,
police.
we needed to not be.
Do you like
up-
motions?
Yeah.
Fred motions
Yes.
for the town, and we're
With
all
the
in
little
favor.
surprise of, oh,
So
yeah, it's gonna
therefore,
continue going up.
I wish
But
you
here's-
all a pleasant and safe
here's-
evening with the wind and rain.
Yeah.
But
Warm.
talking
Tony,
about-
thank
and
you.
we were
Right,
talking
I
about-
got it.
Right, but we.